A wicked stepmother sold her orphaned stepdaughter to a homeless man for just 10,000 naira, less than $10. She thought she was selling the girl into a life of misery, but what she saw in the end shattered her pride and left her disgraced before the world. This story will break you, inspire you, and surprise you. Join me. Let's dive into this amazing story. And if you're just tuning into this channel, please kindly subscribe and give this story a thumbs up. Jessica was painfully thin. At 14, she looked far smaller than her mates, not because of any growth abnormality or hidden illness, but simply because she scarcely ate enough to survive, let alone enjoy a balanced diet. Years of hunger had sandpapered the luster from her ebony skin, yet a stubborn ember of hope still glowed in her gaze, bright as a coal that refused to die. Perched behind a rickety stall at Mile 12 Market, Madame Amaka fanned herself with an outdated banking brochure, the faded logo flapping like a wounded bird. Starched ankara clung to her ample frame, and cheap gold bangles clinked whenever her temper flared, which was often. Amaka regarded herself as a minor deity among traders. Anyone poorer, shorter, or quieter instantly fell beneath her scorn, and Jessica, her orphan niece, ranked lowest of all. If Amaka, seated beneath the shade of her fraying umbrella, so much as spied a cup inches from her elbow, she would shout Jessica's name at full volume rather than reach for it herself. The girl fetched firewood, hauled baskets, washed pots, and, if convenience allowed, might as well have brushed Amaka's teeth or wiped her behind. Every task became Jessica's burden. Every failure Jessica's sin. She was not Amaka's child. She was the daughter of Amaka's late sister, whose life had ended alongside her husband's in a rain-slick crash on the Abuja-Lokoja road. Amaka had accepted guardianship less out of love than out of greed, a modest monthly stipend from an international charity for the welfare of vulnerable orphans. The money barely covered soap, and resentment fermented in Amaka's heart like palm wine left too long in the sun. That afternoon, the sky simmered with pre-rain heat, a moist heaviness that made tempers brittle. Jessica, balancing a battered basin of bitter leaf on her head, navigated the narrow aisles between stalls. Her bare feet hopped over puddles and crushed tomatoes. The air smelled of diesel fumes and overpriced hope. A gaunt man in tattered jeans shuffled past, drawing curious glances. His beard lay tangled on his chest, his eyes were sunshot and weary, and his scarred knuckles betrayed a life of scraped survival. The traders called him Baba Homeless, but his true name was Femi Ajayi. Femi slept beneath the pedestrian bridge, swept the mosque courtyard at dawn for a handful of loose coins, and guarded a threadbare copy of the Book of Proverbs as though it were a treasure map. Jessica noticed the gray dust on his lips and felt a pang of sympathy. She set down her basin, unscrewed the cap of a dented plastic bottle, and offered him the water without a word. It was the first act of mercy Femi had known in weeks. Amaka saw the exchange, nostrils flaring. "You sharing my goods with riffraff? Kneel there." Jessica's knees hit gravel, sharp stones biting through her thin wrapper. Femi, startled, managed a weak, grateful smile before taking the smallest sip and handing the bottle back. A seed of gratitude took root in his chest, fragile yet determined. Market women snickered. "Na wetin be that, Amaka?" one teased. "Your house help, they give beggar your water." Amaka rolled her eyes heavenward, performing outrage for her audience. "House help? She's barely worth the title. Lazy fly, I feed her. See how she repays me." Jessica's cheeks burned, but she kept her eyes down. The harsh sun made everything shimmer, the silver rims on Amaka's bangles, the sweat on Femi's brow, the promise or threat of imminent rain. Femi cleared his throat. "Madam, forgive her. She only showed kindness." "Kindness pays no rent," Amaka snapped. "Next time, fetch your own drink." She dismissed Jessica with a flick of her fan. The girl rose, brushed grit from her knees, and resumed hawking as though nothing had happened. Yet Femi's gaze followed her, first with pity, then with something sterner, a quiet building resolve. Hours passed. Clouds gathered like charcoal smudges above Lagos. When the first fat drops splattered on rusty zinc roofs, traders scrambled to cover their wares. Femi retreated to the bridge, hugging his tattered rucksack. Jessica ducked beneath Amaka's umbrella to cling to the stall's wooden frame, shivering from more than the cold. Amaka ranted about lost profits, the godlessness of beggars, and the ingratitude of nieces. Jessica's stomach growled in soft rebellion. She hushed it with a swallow of saliva. Across the lane, Femi leaned on a cracked concrete post, rain drumming around him. Yet he seemed strangely composed, eyes fixed on the girl who had offered water to a stranger. In that moment, three lives shifted imperceptibly. Hunger met hidden wealth. Cruelty collided with compassion. None of them knew it yet, but the storm above Mile 12 was the merest whisper of the tempest to come. The rain poured for hours that night, turning Mile 12 Market into a maze of mud, rotting leaves, and forgotten cries. Water dripped through holes in tarpaulin roofs, soaking vegetables and tempers. Most traders had packed up. Only a few, like Madame Amaka, lingered beneath creaking umbrellas, grumbling about the useless Lagos weather. Jessica stood barefoot in the downpour, her wrapper soaked, clinging to her frail frame like a second skin. She held onto the stall's wooden beam, trembling from cold and fatigue. Hunger gnawed at her belly, but she dared not speak. Beside her, Madame Amaka munched on a piece of roasted corn, occasionally throwing bits to the ground, not for the goats, but for the satisfaction of watching Jessica look away. Across the road, under the pedestrian bridge, Femi sat with his back to a concrete pillar, legs crossed, his threadbare copy of Proverbs tucked beneath his shirt to protect it from the rain. He hadn't eaten all day either, but the chill didn't bother him as much as what he had witnessed earlier. Jessica, just a child, kneeling in gravel for the crime of kindness. It stirred something old in him, something dangerous. The next morning, Lagos dried its eyes and returned to its usual noise. Mile 12 roared back to life. Bus conductors shouting Ohuelegba, Ikeja, CMS, and traders bargaining with clenched fists and faster tongues. Jessica had barely slept. She had woken at 4 a.m. to fetch water from a leaking tap 2 streets away, swept the front of the stall, washed Amaka's wrapper, and boiled water for her bath. By 9 a.m., she was back in the market, carrying a sack of onions larger than her torso. That was when Femi approached. "Madam," he said softly, stopping in front of Amaka's stall. She didn't look up from her boiled yam and sauce. "Madam," he repeated. This time she raised her eyes slowly, peering over her glasses as if someone had summoned a rat. "Oh, Baba Homeless, what is it?" she asked, dragging each word. "I want to talk to you about Jessica." Amaka paused, fork hovering midair. Then she laughed, a deep mocking sound that echoed under the stall roof. "Jessica?" she scoffed. "Weight and concern you and my house problem?" Femi stood firm. "She's not your daughter. And she's not yours either," Amaka snapped, dropping her fork. "So mind your business. She deserves better." "Who told you I asked for advice?" she hissed. "You see me complain? Or are you looking for another bottle of water?" Femi bowed his head. "I'm asking if you would consider letting her go. Let me take her." Amaka blinked. Her expression shifted. Confusion, then curiosity, and finally something darker. She leaned back, folding her arms beneath her chest. "You want to adopt her?" she said slowly, like the word was a bitter leaf on her tongue. Femi nodded. "Ha!" She laughed again. "This life no balance. Beggar one carry load way even I, way they manage, no fit hold." Her laughter drew a few stares from nearby traders, but she didn't care. Weak, she asked, squinting at him. "You think you're doing her a favor? You wait a sleep for under bridge? You go feed her with rain and Bible verses?" Femi didn't flinch. "I can't give her a palace, but I can give her peace." Amaka's face tightened. Then to Femi's surprise, her mood shifted. "How much you carry?" she asked quietly. Femi froze. I didn't come with money." "Then no they waste my time," she snapped. "You see this girl?" She pointed at Jessica, who stood a few feet away, stunned. "She dey chop my food, wear my cloth, use my bucket. You think Saina free?" Jessica looked at Femi with wide, terrified eyes. Was she being sold, traded? Again? Femi reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in a handkerchief. Inside were 10 crumpled 1,000 naira notes, his entire savings. Years of sweeping, of scrubbing toilets, of carrying loads for stingy travelers. He had planned to use it for medicine, maybe to buy a small shack to sleep safely during rainy nights. Instead, he held it out. "This is all I have." Amaka snatched the money, licking her thumb to count it theatrically. 10,000? She smirked. "You think that's enough to feed a goat, not to talk of a stubborn girl?" "She's not a goat. She's worse, always crying, always weak, always dreaming." "She's still a child," Femi said, more to himself now. There was a pause, a strange silence as Lagos thundered around them. Then Amaka chuckled and stuffed the money into her bra. "Fine," she said. "Take her. Let me see how long you last before you dump her in a gutter. And if you do, don't bring her back." Jessica stood still, blinking, unable to speak. Amaka waved her off like a fly. "Carry your load. Be going. I no want see your shadow again." Femi turned to the girl. "Come," he said gently. Jessica hesitated, looking from him to Amaka back again. Then slowly, silently, she walked toward him. Femi removed his oversized jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Her eyes welled, but no tears fell, only a strange tightness in her chest. She didn't understand why a stranger would want her, but she followed him anyway. As they walked away, hands not quite touching, Amaka crossed her legs in her stall and muttered, "Good riddance." She had no idea she had just handed over the child to a man far richer than she could ever imagine. Jessica didn't speak a word for hours. She simply walked beside Femi, clutching his oversized jacket like it was the only thing tethering her to the earth. The jacket swallowed her tiny frame, but she didn't mind. For the first time in years, no one barked orders at her. No one called her lazy, or useless, cursed. Femi didn't ask her to fetch water, carry anything, or explain herself. He just walked. By sunset, they reached the pedestrian bridge, Femi's home. He cleared a dry spot between two cracked pillars and laid down a piece of flattened cardboard. He placed his worn-out rucksack beneath her head, then rolled up his shirt to use as a pillow. "Sleep, my daughter," he said softly. Jessica's heart skipped. My daughter? No one had called her that since her parents died. She lay down, eyes wide open, staring at the broken ceiling of concrete above. The distant hum of Danfo buses, the shouting of tired conductors, the wailing of a baby somewhere nearby. None of it bothered her. That night she slept in the arms of silence, not comfort, but something close. Morning came with its usual chaos. Mile 12. Market roared to life, traders shouting prices, engines revving, wheelbarrows thudding against pavements. And of course, Madame Amaka came marching in like a queen returning from battle. Dressed in her brightest orange ankara and shiny red slippers, she carried gossip in one hand and arrogance in the other. Word had spread quickly. Amaka had sold the orphan to Baba Homeless. The market women buzzed with laughter and curiosity. As Amaka approached her stall, she spotted Femi and Jessica sitting under the bridge. Jessica was rinsing plastic bowls with soapy water, while Femi folded empty nylon bags. They looked peaceful, and that irritated Amaka more than anything. She walked straight across the road, her voice already raised. "Jessica, how is the bridge life?" she shouted, loud enough for 5 stalls to hear. "Hope your new papa they give you mosquito net for night oh." The market women around her burst into laughter. Jessica didn't respond. Femi calmly looked up and nodded once. Amaka wasn't done. "Baba Homeless, no vexo, but nah, so you adopt children now? Abi, you dey start your own orphanage under bridge?" More laughter. Still, Femi said nothing. He returned to folding his bags. Jessica wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, pretending it was sweat. Amaka wasn't used to silence. Silence to her was defeat. She needed a reaction. "Oya, Jessica, sing for us na. Abi dem no dey sing him where you dey now, or you never bath." The insults stung. A few traders chuckled uneasily now, some beginning to feel she'd gone too far. But Amaka enjoyed herself. She smirked and walked back to her stall, swaying her hips. That became the routine. Every few days, Madame Amaka would come by just to mock them, sometimes with words. Other times, she would toss leftover food toward them and say, "Take." Beggar's lunch. Jessica never looked up. Femi never retaliated. But something was changing beneath the surface. Femi had begun disappearing for hours each day, telling Jessica, "Stay here, I won't be long." He would return with money, sometimes clean clothes, sometimes books. One day he came back with a cracked tablet and taught Jessica how to turn it on. He enrolled her in a free literacy class nearby. Jessica started learning how to read and write. Femi printed proverbs in larger font for her to memorize. But still, they kept their appearances humble. Femi remained the homeless man in the eyes of the market. The beard stayed long, the clothes stayed torn, the secrets stayed buried. Then came the morning Jessica turned 15. Femi handed her a surprise, a second-hand pair of school sandals wrapped in newspaper. Jessica stared at them for a long time. Then slowly she began to cry, not the kind of tears born from pain or hunger, but from something heavier, recognition. She had been seen. She had been remembered. "I don't have much," Femi said, "but I have enough to remind you you are not forgotten." Jessica hugged him tightly. The cardboard beneath their feet suddenly felt like gold. That afternoon, Amaka walked by again. She shouted. "Jessica, they wear shoe now. Nawa-o, bridge life done better?" This time, Jessica looked up. For the first time, her eyes met Amaka's. But she didn't say a word. She didn't need to. There was strength in her silence now, dignity even. It made Amaka falter. She looked away first. That night, Femi sat under the bridge, scribbling into his old notebook. On the top of the page, he wrote, "Observation complete." Below it, in sharp block letters, Phase 2 begins. Jessica, curled beside him, leaned her head on his shoulder. "Papa," she whispered. Femi looked at her. "Yes? What's your real name?" He paused. A small smile crept across his face. "Femi," he said, "but soon, Orphan, the world will remember the rest." She didn't understand, but she didn't ask. Something big was coming. She could feel it. But for now, they slept, undisturbed by thunder, hunger, or shame, because this was no longer a bridge. It was the beginning of something greater. The sun rose late that morning, cloaked in thick gray clouds like it, too, wanted to hide. Jessica stirred from sleep beneath the pedestrian bridge, rubbing her eyes against the stiffness of the concrete. But something felt off, too quiet, too empty. She turned to the left. Femi was gone. His rucksack was missing. So was the book of Proverbs. No plastic plates, no threadbare mat. Even the bucket they used for bathing had vanished. Jessica stood slowly, confusion tightening around her chest like a noose. She scanned the bridge. No trace, no footprints, not even a note. Where is Papa? She waited. 30 minutes, then an hour, then 2. No sign of Femi. She thought of the market, so she ran there barefoot, weaving through the crowd, her eyes darting like a trapped bird's. But no one had seen him. No one had heard anything. His usual sweep spots were untouched. His voice, normally heard quoting proverbs to strangers, had gone silent. She became scared. Could it be that Femi had abandoned her? Where would she start from? Where would she go? But just when she thought all hope was lost, then Femi appeared again. Jessica hugged her tightly and said, "I was scared. I thought you abandoned me." Femi smiled and said, "Never, my little angel. I will never abandon you or allow you suffer again. I went to get some money. Now it's time. You don't belong to the street. You don't deserve that. Come, my daughter, let me take you to where you truly belong." And just like that, Femi took Jessica and went to unknown destination. No one knew where he took her. All they knew was that the popular underbridge where Femi was always seen with Jessica was now empty. No sign of them, just empty. By noon, the news had spread. Femi and Jessica were missing, and Madame Amaka, she was practically glowing with joy. "God done finally answer prayer," she exclaimed to anyone who'd listen, arms folded smugly over her chest. "That Yeye Baba homeless, and that girl done vanish. Maybe dem thief carried him, or dem fall inside gutter." She didn't stop there. "I talk no be everything we wear beard and a prophet. He done use jazz confuse that girl. Maybe he'd unsell her for ritual. The other women in the market laughed. Some nodded. Others weren't so sure. A few had noticed the changes in Jessica, her improved speech, her sandals, the way she carried herself with quiet dignity. It didn't quite add up, but Amaka didn't care. She strutted through the market like a peacock in rainy season. She was a burden, she declared, always crying, lazy, good riddance. Her glee was bitter and loud, but deep down, far, far beneath the layers of spite, a flicker of uncertainty lit in her belly. Where exactly did they go? She wondered. Could someone like Baba Homeless just disappear like that, without a trace? She shoved the thought away. Days turned to weeks, no word, no sighting, nothing. Jessica's name stopped coming up. So did Femi's. Market life moved on. Naira exchanged hands, tomatoes ripened. Gossip shifted to other traders, new scandals, minor thefts. And Amaka, she became more emboldened than ever. She declared herself freed from the curse of her sister's child. She told anyone who'd listen that the charity stipend had been more trouble than it was worth. She even claimed she had kicked Jessica out herself for bad behavior. She wanted to ruin my life, she said. Ungrateful rat. Every time she passed by the bridge where Jessica once slept, she smiled wider. They were gone. She was sure of it. Dead or lost forever. Then one evening everything changed. The market was quieting for the night. Mama Iredi's food canteen was full. Amaka sat with her friends, eating pepper soup and boasting about how her stall had sold out by 3 p.m. The battered TV mounted on the wall crackled with static, then came alive. The 9 p.m. National Business Report began. The anchor woman, poised in an emerald green gel, smiled into the camera. Good evening, Nigeria. In tonight's top story, mystery entrepreneur and investor Chief Oluwafemi Ajayi has launched a multi-billion naira agro-tech hub in Lekki Free Trade Zone, promising to revolutionize food distribution across West Africa. Amaka wasn't listening at first until the screen changed. There he was, Femi, standing tall in a dazzling white agbada, his beard neatly trimmed, his skin glowing. By his side stood a radiant young girl in a powder blue gown. Jessica, hair straightened, skin gleaming, posture proud. Amaka's spoon dropped into her bowl with a splash. The TV continued. Chief Ajayi, once a man of mystery, has revealed his personal story of living among the people to understand Nigeria's grassroots market challenges. Beside him, his foster daughter, Miss Jessica Ajayi, addressed the crowd about education for street children. The clip cut to Jessica speaking at a podium. I was once invisible, I was once unwanted, but kindness gave me wings. The crowd erupted in applause. Amaka stood up, trembling. That can't be him, she muttered. Her friends stared. But it looks exactly like... No, Amaka shouted. It's not possible. That one on TV, that one is Billionaire. Rich, clean. Our own Femi was a beggar. That girl, she can't be Jessica. She just looks like her. Someone reached for the remote to rewind the footage. No need, Amaka said quickly, grabbing her bag. That TV, no day show clear. Maybe na Photoshop. Or another Femi. She stormed out of the canteen. But the whispers had begun. That night she couldn't sleep. She tossed in bed, sweat pooling in the creases of her neck. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jessica's face on that stage. Every time she rolled over, she heard the applause. Could it be? Could Baba Homeless have been a billionaire in disguise? Could she, Madame Amaka, have sold her own niece for 10,000 naira to a man who now ruled industries? She refused to believe it until the day he returned. The days that followed the news broadcast were strangely quiet in Mile 12. Even the market women, who usually couldn't keep secrets for longer than a bus ride, spoke in hushed tones when Femi's name came up. Some now referred to him as Chief Femi. Others simply called him the disguised billionaire. But one thing united them all. No one was mocking him anymore. Everyone except Madame Amaka. She doubled down on her denial. That TV lie, she told her friends. You know how Nollywood people they act? That's not the same man. Our Baba Homeless no fit speak English like that. That girl is not Jessica. Look at her skin. She fairer now. That's bleaching cream. They just resemble small, that's all. She laughed too loudly when she said it, like she was trying to convince herself more than anyone else. But her voice was cracking at the edges. Even her closest allies, Mama Aretti, Sade Taylor, and Ngozi Pepper, had stopped laughing along. They were beginning to piece things together. Femi's quiet dignity, Jessica's sudden confidence, the way both of them vanished and reappeared as royalty. Amaka saw the shift and hated it. So when word reached her, just 2 days after the broadcast, that a convoy of luxury SUVs had entered Lagos from Lekki and was heading toward mile 12, her heart froze. It happened on a Thursday. By 10 a.m. the sun was already blazing down, and the market buzzed as usual until the sound of sirens and revving engines sliced through the air like a knife. Every trader paused, necks craned, buckets dropped. Then they saw it, a pearl-white Rolls-Royce at the front of the convoy, followed by 3 black Prado Jeeps, police escort bikes on either side, and a large delivery truck pulling in behind them. The vehicles came to a stop right in front of Mile 12's Central Square. Uniformed security men stepped out first. Then the driver of the Rolls-Royce hurried around to the rear door. With the kind of grace reserved for royalty, Femi Ajayi stepped out, dressed in a snow-white agbada with silver embroidery glinting in the sun. His beard was well-groomed, his shoes shining, and beside him, Jessica, dressed in a flowing lilac gown, her hair styled into soft curls, her smile calm and composed. She waved gently as people began to gather, whispering, pointing, gasping. "Nah them!" someone shouted. "That's Baba Homeless and the girl." Jesus! It's true. Phones were out. Videos started rolling. The same crowd that once mocked now rushed forward to get a glimpse of the 2 former nobodies who now walked like kings. And in the middle of it all, frozen in disbelief, was Madame Amaka. She tried to hide behind her stall, but Jessica saw her. Their eyes met. Amaka's face drained of color. Jessica didn't flinch. She whispered something into Femi's ear. He nodded. Femi stepped forward, taking the microphone one of his aides offered. The security men gently guided the crowd into a semicircle around him. "My people," he began, his deep voice calm yet powerful. "I once lived here, under that very bridge." He pointed, gasps followed. "I swept floors, I begged, I was insulted, I was ignored, but I never forgot who I was." He turned to Jessica and smiled. "This young lady gave me water when I had none. She saw me, not as trash, but as a man. Today I return, not as the man who slept under a bridge, but as the man who built one." Applause. Jessica stepped forward. The microphone was handed to her. She looked at the crowd, then directly at Madame Amaka. "I was sold," she began, her voice clear, calm, and piercing. "For 10,000 naira. That was the price of my freedom." Murmurs rippled. "I was insulted, beaten, humiliated. But I was also adopted, not just by a man, but by a destiny I never saw coming." She turned and raised her voice slightly. "Many of you watched, some of you laughed, but today I have come to forgive." Silence. She walked slowly, intentionally, towards Amaka's stall. The crowd parted. Amaka couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Jessica stopped a few steps away. "Stepmother," she said softly. Amaka's lips trembled. Jessica reached into her handbag and pulled out a brown envelope. She placed it gently on the stall table. "For Chidinma," she said, "your daughter. It's a full scholarship, primary to university. She doesn't deserve to suffer for your mistakes." Gasps again. Tears slipped from Amaka's eyes before she could stop them. Femi joined Jessica and looked Amaka dead in the eye. "Do you see us now?" he asked. Amaka nodded slowly, her head bowing in shame. "I didn't know," she whispered. "You never cared to," Jessica replied gently. "But still, we forgive you." Jessica turned back to the crowd. "Today we brought gifts." She waved her hand and the delivery truck was opened. Dozens of bags of rice, cartons of oil, spaghetti, salt, soap, food and supplies were handed out freely. Women screamed in joy. Children danced. The entire market became a carnival of relief. But Madame Amaka, she remained seated, still, frozen, tears now running freely down her face. The same girl she had mocked had returned in splendor, and she had not come to destroy. She had come to bless. That evening, long after the convoy left, Amaka sat alone behind her stall. No friends, no crowd, no gossip, only silence and shame. She picked up the scholarship envelope again, running her fingers over Jessica's signature, a name she once spat on, now a name that carried weight. And for the first time in her life, Madame Amaka wept, not from anger, not from pride, but from the unbearable weight of regret. The sun rose the next morning, but Madame Amaka didn't. She sat motionless in her one-room apartment, still dressed in yesterday's wrapper, still holding the brown scholarship envelope in her trembling hands. Her eyes were red. Her lips were cracked. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't even turned on the fan, though the room felt like an oven. Outside, Mile 12 Market moved on. Fresh tomatoes arrived, fish sellers shouted over each other, and women gossiped about new supply prices. But wherever Amaka's name came up, it was not for business. It was for shame. Now she sell the girl for 10,000. I hear say she even they laughed them that time. Now see how God's shame am. Amaka knew they were talking. She could feel it. Every whisper, every glance, every forced smile. The same women who once sat at her stall to gossip had now scattered like flies. Mama Iredi didn't stop by. Sade Taylor had passed her twice without greeting. Even the younger girls now greeted her with suspicious politeness. Good morning, Ma. But their eyes were full of mockery. That was the first punishment. Loneliness. When Amaka finally returned to her stall 3 days later, the market had changed. Jessica's face was on posters at the cooperative stand. Her scholarship program had officially launched. Education for every child, it read. Children lined up each morning with books in hand. Parents whispered blessings as they watched Jessica, dressed simply in jeans and a branded t-shirt, coordinating volunteers. Everywhere Amaka looked, Jessica was there, not physically, but in influence. She couldn't escape her. Some women tried to act normal around her, but there was tension, unspoken judgment. Someone once said, to be ignored is a wound, but to be noticed only for your shame is worse. That was Amaka's reality now. One afternoon, she stood in line to buy pepper, and the woman in front of her muttered, madam, no vexo, you no go use your connection to beg for scholarship for Chidinma. The line laughed. Amaka's throat tightened. No, she said, holding her basket tightly. Jessica already gave me more than I deserve. But it wasn't just the market. At home, Chidinma, her own daughter, had changed too. Is it true, Mummy? She asked one evening, eyes wide, that you sold Jessica? Like a goat? Amaka sat frozen. She's my cousin. She gave me a scholarship. Why did you treat her like that? Amaka couldn't answer. Her tongue felt heavy. For the first time, her child looked at her not with admiration, but with something close to disappointment. That was the second punishment, loss of dignity. One evening, after another long silent day, Amaka did something she never imagined herself doing. She took a bath, wore a clean wrapper, and walked alone to the pedestrian bridge. She stood there silently, staring at the concrete space where Femi and Jessica once slept. She didn't know what she expected to see. Maybe a sign, a voice. Instead, she saw a small sunflower lying at the edge of the pillar. Fresh, deliberately placed. The same flower Jessica had once said meant resilience. She bent down and picked it up. Her hands trembled. She turned around slowly, and there, just a few feet away, stood Jessica. Alone, wearing a simple bandana, no makeup, no crowd, no bodyguard. Just Jessica. The two locked eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Amaka dropped to her knees. I was wicked, she whispered, voice cracking. I was proud. I didn't treat you like blood. I treated you like rubbish. And yet, you forgave me. Jessica stepped forward, lifting her gently by the arm. You sold me, she said softly, but I wasn't worthless. I was planted. Amaka's lips quivered. Why didn't you expose me? You could have ruined me. Jessica looked around the bridge and replied, I know what it feels like to be at your lowest. I wouldn't wish that shame on anyone, not even you. Tears ran freely down Amaka's cheeks now. I am sorry. I believe you, Jessica said, placing the sunflower in her hand. But now you must become better for Chidinma. The next week, Madame Amaka made the boldest move of her life. She stood before the entire Mile 12 cooperative, eyes swollen, voice shaking, and confessed. I mistreated my niece. I was proud. I used my position to mock someone who became more than I could ever imagine. But from today, I will no longer be the Amaka you all knew. I will work. I will serve. And to everyone's shock, she asked to volunteer with Jessica's scholarship team, washing plates, cleaning chairs, arranging lesson tables. At first, people mocked her, but she didn't stop. She arrived early, stayed late, swept floors, carried water. Jessica watched quietly. Femi, now running multiple foundations, observed from afar and said to Jessica, some people learn through blessings, others learn through breaking. Jessica nodded, but at least she's learning. One evening, Jessica and Femi sat together watching the sun set behind the bridge where it all began. She's changing, Jessica whispered. She is, Femi agreed. You think people like that deserve second chances? Femi smiled. Everyone does, but not everyone accepts it. Jessica turned to him. I'm glad I was sold. Femi raised a brow. She continued, if she hadn't let me go, I might never have found you, or who I really am. Femi nodded, pulling her gently into a side hug. You were never lost, he said. You were just planted in the dark, and now you're blooming. 6 months later, Mile 12 Market no longer looked the same. Bright new umbrellas lined the walkways. Children in clean uniforms rushed past the stalls every morning, clutching notebooks with the logo. Jessica Ajayi Foundation. Educate to elevate. The women who once mocked the orphan now greeted her with warm smiles and eager gratitude. Jessica had become a name that opened doors. Yet through it all, she remained simple, humble, present. Every Friday she visited the bridge, not to mourn, but to remember. That place of concrete and cold had become her personal altar, a reminder that greatness doesn't always rise from golden cradles. Sometimes it is born under broken ceilings. One such Friday, Femi met her there. He was dressed simply, no agbada, no convoy, just a plain white shirt and slacks. In his hand was a file. I have something for you, he said, handing it to her. Jessica opened it, her eyes widened. It was legal adoption papers. Her heart swelled. You want to make it official? She whispered. You've always been mine, Femi replied, but now the world will know too. Tears brimmed in her eyes. You saved me. No, Femi said, shaking his head gently. You saved me. You gave me purpose, reminded me that true wealth lies not in our bank accounts, but in how many lives we touch. They embraced right there under the bridge that once symbolized lack, now transformed into a sacred monument of rebirth. Meanwhile, Madame Amaka had kept her word. She now served as a volunteer supervisor in Jessica's food distribution arm. Each day she carried bags of rice, cleaned storage rooms, and mentored struggling mothers who reminded her of her past mistakes. People still whispered, but she didn't hide from it. In fact, she welcomed it. Shame had burned her pride to ashes, and from those ashes, humility had grown. As the sun dipped over Mile 12 that evening, a small crowd gathered in front of a new signboard that had just been mounted. From Orphan to Angel, Jessica Ajayi Foundation Headquarters. Mile 12, beneath it were etched the words, when you plant kindness in the dirt of cruelty, even the mud can bloom. The market erupted in applause. Drummers began to play. Women danced, children laughed, and Jessica stood quietly at the center, a once unwanted girl now loved by thousands. She had been sold, but in truth, she had been chosen. Moral of this story, treat others with kindness, no matter their status. For today's rejected soul may rise above all. True wealth lies in compassion, and forgiveness holds more power than revenge. Never underestimate the value of a heart that chooses love over cruelty. What did you learn from this story? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. I would be glad to read them. And guess what? There is another interesting moral story coming in a few days. So please subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications bell so you'll be the first to watch when I upload it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your loved ones. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you,